I worked at a place called Duke's off I-15, real close to Idaho Falls. I'd been working there for only a year until a week ago. It was a horrible place, absolutely awful. The manager there was an absolute freak. The freak of freaks, actually. The dude would always make the girls working there uncomfortable, to the point where no women worked there anymore, and it was just guys. He actually followed one of them home, but didn't do anything, just drove off when she saw him parked across the street, watching her unlock her front door. Would it surprise you that she didn't show up for the morning shift the very next day, or ever again? I'd caught him biting his fingernails one day in the kitchen, and spitting them in one of the pots on the stove that a cook was using. Disgusting. I swear this guy was nuts. You just get that feeling with some people. This guy gave the feeling, all right. Not only talked it, but walked it with a pep in his step. I didn't want to work there like most of the guys. I kind of had to. I got kicked out of my house at 18. I didn't want to be there anyways. Dad was a drunk and Mom was gone. She'd left without ever saying goodbye. I didn't blame her. I should have done it with this place. I was doing dishes late in the afternoon, piled high and no sign of ever making a dent. The dish boy on the shift before me left a ton of fun. I usually mess around, joking and stuff, with Enrico back by Dish Bay, but he wasn't there. I found out through the manager that he'd quit. Lucky. God, I wish I was him. I didn't ask any further questions, just wanted out of his office. It smelled like coconut oil and Cheetos in there, an odd mix. The last day I ever saw my manager, I didn't put in my 2 weeks, didn't give him the middle finger or no call, no show. No, the last day I ever saw him was when the FBI busted down the doors, flashing a warrant for his arrest. These guys look serious. I noticed they never took their hands off the butt of their pistols. I don't know what this guy did, but they were treating him like he was on the FBI's most wanted list. I was peeking out one of the restaurant windows to see if I could spot any snipers or maybe a helicopter. He didn't put up a fight, but he kept a smirk on his face the entire time as they handcuffed him and walked him outside. What a creep. I don't think he felt remorse for whatever he must have done. One of the cops said he had to shut down all services for the rest of the day. Refund all orders in the building and don't let anyone leave. No customers, no employees, one of them said. That's when they started checking every table, taking names. They were paying special attention to our customers. For what reason, I'd soon find out. Another officer had me lead him to our kitchen, where he requested I open the freezer. I did what I was told, but I wasn't allowed to go in with him. He had to have been in there for at least 10 minutes before he came out with a tub of meat. I asked what was going on, but he didn't give me a straightforward answer. The entire ordeal of them being there took over 4 hours, and then we were allowed our keys and given a card from one of the agents, emphasizing we don't eat the food and to be on our way home and not come back. A few days later, I was called in for questioning. I was in some discreet location in some plain Jane office building that looked unimportant. I was asked a few questions with regards to my manager. I felt like a suspect, but they quickly realized I truly had zero clue what was going on. I kept asking them what happened. I really wanted to know. In hindsight, I really didn't want to know. They spilled the beans and said someone was served human flesh. In fact, they consumed most of it before ever realizing until someone else at the table pointed it out. The FBI confiscated a tub from the freezer that had some tape marked in red Sharpie. Special meat. It was all human. DNA had been extracted and analyzed for several of the cuts of flesh in the tub. They all came back to the same person, Enrico. I was working second shift. The usual, clock in, clock out, light work. I've been here several years, working my way up to management. I called the shots. It was my restaurant now, my show, at least when I was clocked in. My experience meant I was prepared for anything. It was my job to know things, and my employees relied on me when it came to tough questions. They expected me to have all the answers. Then one night, a few bikes and trucks pulled out front, blocking all the entrances into the parking lot. The brights were so strong, I don't think there was a single shadow in the restaurant. I'd taken one of the menus and covered my eyes from it as I walked to the front double doors to see what was going on. Before I can make it outside, several guys kicked open the entrance and started waving shotguns in everyone's faces. Said they were looking for someone and that it wouldn't take long. "Sit tight, you'll be all right," I heard one of them say. One of the waitresses screamed. Another ran back towards the kitchen. I threw my hands up and told everyone to go back to my office, but was immediately shut down by one of the dudes with a beard as long as a baseball bat. He pointed a 12G right at my face and told me to keep my mouth shut, waving me off towards the kitchen. We walked straight to the back of the house with 3 of them, all armed with their fingers on the trigger. 2 guys stayed in front of the house, I guess to make sure nobody ran out to snitch. "Where's Chum?" the guy with the long beard said. I was confused by the name. Was it a nickname? "I'm sorry, but I really don't know who that is. Is that his real name?" My voice sounded terrified and frail. One of them whispered in the guy's ear, then without a flinch, grabbed one of the cooks by the back of his neck and dragged him over to the fryers. They dunked his face into the fryer for only a couple of seconds, but that was enough to fuse his lips together and give his entire face third-world plastic surgery on the house. The image was so disturbing, I had to look away. I don't think I'll ever recover from seeing that. "Now, do any of you want to tell us where Chum is?" Beardman said. Nobody had any clue what this guy was talking about, and none of us wanted to speak up again. I thought of telling a lie to maybe buy some time, but I was afraid my bluff would be called, and I'd end up face down in the high heat of one of the fryers. Their patience was a short fuse, and they weren't there to waste time. They grabbed a waitress by the ponytail and took her over to the fryer. She was crying rivers and pleading for one of us to do something, pleading with them not to dump her in the fryer. Everyone froze. I was locked in place, like hitting the pause button of a movie. I didn't want to be the next one they sent bobbing for apples. They dunked her. This time, it was a few seconds. She squirmed and grabbed at thin air, trying to find any way out. When they brought her back up, I don't think she was conscious anymore. Her eyelids were zipped shut, along with her lips, just like the other guy. Her skin had leathered like she'd been under the sun her entire life. A burnt pepperoni pizza. It was a horrible thing to see, especially knowing how beautiful she'd been. Before they could carry on with the endless cycle that was obviously not on any path of direction elsewhere, the bearded guy got a call. He looked at us blankly, confused, angry. The phone was shoved quickly back into his pocket, and he pointed the shotgun back in my face. "Everyone, I want you to close your eyes and don't move," he said with as much calm as I'd ever thought he could muster. I was ready for my head to just pop like a piñata from the blast, but that never came. After a while, we opened our eyes and saw they were gone. It seemed all the customers got out of Dodge rather quickly. We'd had zero answers as to what or why this happened. As to who Chum is, none of us know. We weren't lying. If I had to take a guess, I'd say someone had bad info and we were caught at the wrong place at the wrong time. They realized this and hightailed it out before they caused a bigger mess than they already had. I caught it reaching out from the freezer for some diced tomatoes on a cutting board once, in the after hours of the night, right after closing while I was prepping for the next day. It made a weird chewing noise and spit them out, hissing in agony. What a reaction to have for tomatoes. I was frozen for a moment, unsure if what I saw was real or just a late-night hallucination. I grabbed a knife and swung at its slimy fleshed arm, slicing a huge gash in its wrist. The scream was devilish, demented. I couldn't believe any of this was happening, so I packed up early and got out of there, hoping to sleep it off and come back the next day to realize that all I needed was to turn in early. Just another one of those long days. It was the next day and I was back in the kitchen. While cooking, I couldn't keep my eyes off the freezer. Another cook had to grab something from in there, and I almost stopped them, but I didn't. I was curious as to what might happen. They went in and came back out. I was giving them a weird look, to which they asked me why I was looking at them that way. I didn't say anything, and my face changed from fear to relief in a matter of a second. The rest of the day flew by. We'd just finished closing and it was prep time. I was all alone again, but feeling great. I had a few tubs that needed to be filled and put in the freezer. The freezer is pretty deep, and if you're a newbie, finding things can be a hassle. Lucky me, I know where everything is. I was towards the back of the freezer grabbing some tubs when I heard a noise. It was that thing again. Didn't I already take care of this? Do I have schizophrenia or something? Maybe a doctor's visit is past due, or a psychiatrist. It was coming from under one of the shelves, and all I could see was its arm again. It curled one skinny, malnourished finger, signaling me to come over. I didn't. Then it spoke, told me that if I wanted it gone, I needed to bring it something appetizing. Its words, not mine. I asked what it meant. It said blood. Rats would do. Dogs, cats. That should be fine. I'd set some traps up out back by the garbage bins and caught a couple rats, hoping this would be the end of my psychiatric episode. It wasn't enough. Soon I was bringing it stray dogs. I'd have to close the freezer before it started eating. I couldn't bear to listen to that sound it made. It reminded me of one of those hot dog eating contests. The sound of food being stuffed and swallowed at alarming speeds. A lot of gurgling, heavy breathing. Only good thing about it was it never left a mess. Bone for bone, it devoured it all. I grew tired of its requests. It was never enough, with each request leading to an even larger one. Eventually, it requested something I knew I could never morally uphold on my end. A person. This time it insisted. If I wanted it gone, then bring it a human. Alive.